Terry Park's wool shears, the tiny tungsten blades turn rather than oscillate, reducing vibration to virtually nothing and dramatically reducing heat. That means safety in the wool industry, which abounds with horror stories of sheep and shearers maimed by the traditional shears nicknamed death adders. You could pick up these shears by the wrong end and not be cut. The idea seems so simple you wonder why it wasn't on the market decades ago. Designers have long recognised the potential advantages of rotary shears, and the first unsuccessful attempt to develop one was made in 1894. Since then, many organisations, including Sunbeam, Lister and the Australian Wool Corporation, have tried unsuccessfully to perfect the idea.
Low contact.
According to Mr. Park, they failed because, like
low contact area.
the greatest cutting impact was at the base of each blade. To cleanly cut sheep hair, which is 30 to 40 times finer than ours, the cutting impact must be at the blade's tip. Mr. Park has managed to tension each blade to achieve this, even though he's had no formal training as an engineer. In an industry where speed is the essence, the rotary has shorn a merino in 2 minutes 17 seconds, comparable to the oscillating type.
Will the Australian Workers' Union have any objection to the adoption of a rotary shear?
None, I've already seen them over this.
And they're quite happy about it, are they?
Yes, they said as long as you don't go wide, it's okay by then.
So do you think it will see widespread adoption in the industry?
Well, I'm very sure it will because of its advantages, yes.
The Victorian government is helping Mr. Park get the prototype to pilot production stage, which will start in about 6 months. He hopes commercial production will be adopted by an Australian company, but he says he has only had offers from New Zealand and Germany. When the rotary shears hit the market, they will reveal their only disadvantage, selling at double the cost of the traditional death adders.
BMX bikes are big business at Morisset Peninsula, but it's just not the same unless there's a good obstacle course. Without community funds, the children got to work in the school holidays and turned an old access road into a first-class BMX track. Everything they needed they asked for, and the hours of hard work were well worth it. So what motivated the neighbourhood kids?
Just getting bored and nowhere else to ride, riding on the roads. Too dangerous, so we decided to build a track here.
And was it difficult?
It was at first, but we got more and more people helping us as the track progressed.
And how much time do you spend on the track?
Nearly all day, just
fixing it up.
Parts of the day, fixing it up, and after each day we have to fix it up. Just get rest after a day's riding.
So do our bikes.
President Reagan held an urgent meeting this afternoon with his top national security advisors to discuss the threat posed by the growing crisis in the Persian Gulf. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia's ambassador, Prince Bandar bin Sultan, was holding meetings of his own on Capitol Hill to tell key senators of his country's concern over the Iranian attacks.
This is a breach of international law, and the repercussions of it will be very serious and will affect the international community overall. If things escalate beyond our capabilities, we have many friends in the world. America is one of them.
Earlier today, Bandar met with Secretary of State George Shultz. Sources say Bandar told Shultz that if Iran attacked again, the Saudis would have to respond with military force and hoped the U.S. would back them up. Shultz told Bandar that the U.S. would be willing to help under certain conditions. Administration sources say those conditions are that the Arab states of the Gulf would have to issue a public invitation to the U.S. and accord U.S. military forces with the necessary aircraft landing rights and port facilities. U.S. forces would be used only to protect international shipping and not to attack Iran. Fresh from its foreign policy failures in Lebanon, the United States is moving cautiously. Nonetheless, CBS News has learned that the U.S. is in contact with the governments of France and Great Britain about the possibility of setting up a multinational effort to keep the Persian Gulf open.
Moderate Arab states of the Persian Gulf closed ranks against Iran today. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and 4 other countries accused Iran of aggression, violating the UN Charter and the laws of navigation. They cited 5 attacks on neutral ships in the last 2 weeks, including yesterday's air assault on a Saudi Arabian tanker in Saudi Arabian waters. While diplomats were measuring responses and weighing options, money men in the world's financial centers were putting their pencils to a 43-month-old war that now threatens to affect every country that buys oil. The rising tensions of the Persian Gulf are being recorded in the loss book at Lloyd's of London, the largest insurance combine in the world. The Al Ahud, a Saudi tanker, struck by a missile on May 7th. Lloyd's underwriters have increased their insurance rate for Gulf-bound freighters as much as 6-fold in the last 3 weeks.
I believe that things are likely to get worse before they get better, because if the Iranians are going to get any effect of this gesture that they're making, then it has to be pursued a little way.
Iran's thinking is simple. As long as its own ships are unsafe in the Persian Gulf, everyone's ships will be unsafe. There are some who think it's all a trap.
Because I think it's quite possible that the Ayatollah Khomeini is deliberately trying to get the Americans to intervene. There are signs that he's interested in the American election, that he would quite like to cause trouble for Reagan, and that if he can lure the American fleet and then makes things difficult, this could be quite satisfying to him.
With the world market still glutted with oil, the U.S., its Western allies, and the moderate Arab states still have some time to be cautious.
The youngsters were competing in 4 divisions and in a variety of crafts ranging from sailboards to Adams 10s. Several heats earlier in the week had to be shortened because of lack of wind, but the race organiser, Mr Bob Snape, says the titles have been a success.
It has been a success in that we've managed to give them a fair variety of conditions during the series. They had 2 light days in their first 2 heats. Yesterday there was a good stiff breeze and it's been quite a moderate breeze for them today. And they've had some sunshine eventually. So they've had a mixture of conditions and given different classes of boat an opportunity to show out under different conditions. The most difficult sailing is in very light conditions, after testing, and fortunately yesterday and today we haven't had to shorten courses to get results, and it's given them the full circuits. Probably the most competitive grouping being in the Flying 11 group. After the first 3 heats, we had any of 40 or 50 boats that would come out the eventual winner. So that in itself makes the sailing quite successful, I feel.
Officials are still working out the time-adjusted results for the 4 heats. In today's final heat, David Jackson from Terrigal took line honours, sailing a Hobie 18. In the sailboard division, Lucas Stanfield from Sydney was first across the line on Graffiti, while in Division 4, Pittwater's Emmett Lazick was first in a Flying 11. And Swansea's Craig Phillips, sailing in Adams 10, was first across in the Division 4 large mono-hull boats. For the 300 school students, there's a presentation night tonight, and then it's back home until next year.
The sequence of events this week reads like a horror story. On Tuesday, an elderly couple from Coffs Harbour were killed when their car slammed head-on into a semi-trailer on the Pacific Highway near Guandolen. The next day, a 48-year-old man lost his life in another head-on smash at Thornton. On Thursday, 2 people were killed when a semi-trailer failed to stop at roadworks on the New England Highway near Musselburgh. The semi-driver is facing 4 charges. Also on that day, the body of a 35-year-old Warners Bay man was found after a hit-and-run accident at Gateshead. On Friday night, the number of deaths increased, with 3 people killed on the Central Coast. Saturday, and 52-year-old Jean Florence Richardson of Lemon Tree Passage was killed in a head-on at Anna Bay. That night, Jane Phillips, 57, died when her husband, who was driving the car, failed to give way at the corner of Donald and Stockton Streets, Nelson Bay. Early this morning, 3 more were killed. Just after midnight, 20-year-old Barry Cowley died when he was hit by a car in Brentford. The driver of the car has been charged with drink driving. In another pedestrian accident, Lionel Robert Carter was killed when he was hit by a car on the Pacific Highway at Nabiac. At about 5 o'clock this morning, Mark Anthony Balston's car mounted this medium strip at Ellamore Vale Road and smashed into the safety fence. One of the poles went through his windscreen and hit him in the face. He was dead when the ambulance arrived. Sergeant Anforth from Newcastle Police is appalled at the number dead. He says there needs to be a strict driver education program and tougher penalties.
Well, I think we've got to look for that type of solution. We see overseas, and particularly Japan's one of the places that I see, that the jail sentences are not just jail sentences, they're sent to special schools or to special constructed areas for this, where there is schooling on this, and they've got to pass and qualify to come back out of there when they leave the jail, that they're properly qualified drivers and at least psychologically able to handle the vehicle.
It's called the Sterile Preparation and Cytotoxic Safety Unit, and it's yet another indication of the increasing complexity of modern medicine. Located in the pharmacy section, the unit consists of 2 airlocked sterile rooms, one for the preparation of anti-cancer drugs and the other for intravenous fluids. The anti-cancer drugs destroy body cells, and only 4 years ago it was discovered that they can genetically alter the cells of pharmacists who were preparing the drugs. For that reason, a drug preparation cabinet that the Royal has been using for 18 months has been placed in this airtight room. No particle of drug or bacteria can get in or out. As a final precaution, the staff will now wear specially designed sterile gowns, hats, gloves and glasses. 2 airlocks away is the room for intravenous fluids, where $100 a day meals are prepared for the patients. These days, such a facility is regarded as necessary and not particularly expensive. The unit costs less than $13,000 to build, a small amount in a $1 million medical world. But the money did have to come from the hospital's own pocket.
This is the complete facility for only one that's been built in the Hunter region at this stage, and as far as I know, the only one in New South Wales has been built for New Australian Standard that was published last September. Now, these other hospitals have the prospect of either building their own and the outlay involved in such a facility, or they can maybe, and it has been talked that maybe we'll be running it as a regional service to the other hospitals in the area.
The support for this year's Terrigal to Gosford Surf the City Fun Run, held last month, is an indication of the growing legion of runners. 1,500 starters faced the gun at Terrigal and raced over the 11-kilometre course to Gosford. At Coranbong last weekend, more than 800 hardy souls of all ages competed in a half marathon over 21.1 kilometres. There is certainly no sign of an end to the running boom. In Gosford and Wyong alone this year, there are at least 8 fun runs and many more throughout the Hunter region. In response to the runners' need to know more about their sport, a runners' expo and seminar will be held at Gosford this weekend. Activities, runs and displays will be held from Friday to Sunday, with the seminar on Saturday night. Mike Aitken, one of the region's top runners, is helping to organise the program.
Runners, they put in a lot of work. They put in a lot more hours than footballers do. They put in, they train by themselves. They spend a lot of money on clothing and footwear, and they're a forgotten. And for the numbers that are actually getting around on the streets, they are a forgotten minority in the sporting fraternity. Part of the weekend is indoors. We have the seminar on the Saturday night, and we have the expo. That's indoors. But Saturday morning we have guided runs where you can go on a 5, 10 or 15 kilometre run. We have a hill climb on Saturday afternoon, as well as a mini run for kids and mums, where every person who finishes gets a little lollipop and certificate, and we're going to have another guided training run through the bush trails adjacent to Gosford or around Gosford afterwards.
At school assembly this morning, Red Cross field officer Stella Smith was handed a cheque for $1,446. More than 100 students at the school knocked on doors in Raymond Terrace last month to collect the money. The top collectors were presented with a small prize by the area chairman of Red Cross Calling, Mr. Warwick Bremner. Alicia Griffin collected the most money, bringing in $95 on the day. In return, the school was presented with a set of encyclopedia donated by Grolier and valued at $800. Although the school had the misfortune to suffer extensive fire damage to its administration block earlier this year, so far the students have raised more than $8,000 for a variety of charities.
These are all the facilities to be included in the $500,000 pool for Maitland, though it won't necessarily look like this. The design of the complex will be left up to the successful tenderer. The shortage of funds at this stage will permit the construction of only a wading pool, a learner's pool and an 8-lane Olympic pool. The diving pool and the new grandstand will just have to wait. The only section of the existing pool to be retained is the reticulation system. Due to the widening of Parallel Street for the 4-lane Maitland inner city bypass, the Department of Main Roads has agreed to pay for the relocation of the change rooms and the entrance, as well as financing the thoroughfare from Elgin Street through Maitland Park to the pool. Maitland City Council is also calling on private enterprise to take part by establishing a water slide in the landscaped gardens. Tenders for the swimming complex will be called at the end of this week. The contract, though, won't be let until the end of July, which means that unless the builder works extremely quickly, the Maitland pool won't be completed for the coming swimming season.
Compared to the former office on the southern side of Hunter Street, Qantas's new travel centre across the road in the GIO building allows plenty of room. The airline decided it was about time to update its presence in the north, considering the turnover figures. 10 years ago, Qantas was selling about $1.5 million worth of international travel in this area. Today, that figure is closer to $14 million. And according to Qantas's sales director, Mr. John Sharp, the Newcastle office, which takes in northern New South Wales, taps a significant market.
Newcastle and the whole region, the northern New South Wales region, is very important to Qantas. There's some 31,000 people that fly from this area on international flights of Qantas around the world. And that's a very big base for us to work. There are also 23 or 24 other airlines that operate out of Australia, and they also draw people from this area, and we usually carry about half of the traffic out of this country, which means that there are some 60,000 plus people that travel internationally, and we've got to have a presence so that we get our rightful share of the business.
I really believe that the whole 11 of the players who go out in the park these days believe in themselves. I think they're finally thinking, well, gee, we're only human just like all these good teams, Sydney City, Marconi, Heidelberg last Sunday, and once again Wollongong on Wednesday night. They're thinking, well, we're just human like that. They are, and we're starting to compete on the park and have a right to win every ball that we go for.
Are you really confident that you can go on and toss these big sides or get close to them?
I'm very confident. I've seen the boys' attitudes both at training and in the last couple of games, and if they've got that attitude that we have an equal right to play with these big teams, we'll, on many occasions, I think we'll beat them, but at the other occasions we'll match them as well.
Some sections of the William Lyon Hospital at Waratah are badly outdated, the worst sections being wards 16 and 17, where some 27 geriatric patients undergo therapy. Apart from being far from pleasant, the wards have been criticised by the hospital's fire safety inspectors. At a meeting today, staff and members of the hospital board thrashed out just what is to be done and, put simply, decided to close the substandard wards and treat more patients at home and through hospital daycare.
The proposal will involve a day hospital to provide care for some people through that facility, and also a very much expanded domiciliary care service which provides nursing care for people in their homes. Ultimately, the advantages for the patients will be that more of them will be cared for at home rather than in inpatient beds in a hospital.
That will provide a better standard of care than at present?
Yes, we think so.
Those that will benefit from that different style of care, not necessarily those that are in that particular ward or those two particular wards at the moment, though?
Yes, that's right. Obviously, it depends on the patients. They have to be selected for suitable patients to be able to take advantage of the day hospital. Others, you would need the home nursing care.